For the past several months, the FBI has been pushing forward arguments for law enforcement backdoors into encrypted devices and applications. Their most recent attempt at gaining political capital included using the iPhone from one of the terrorists in the December 2015 San Bernardino attack. This iPhone was encrypted with a password, preventing the FBI from accessing the phone and gaining what they called possible information linking to other terrorists or other terrorist attacks. Today on the Threatcast, we'll be discussing privileged or scenario-based backdoors, meaning pretty much the government says, give me this, and they get it, and why they are either useful or harmful to the concept of encryption and security. Today on the Threatcast, I'm joined by Adam Blake.
Hello.
Adam, have you checked your privilege recently?
I have not, but I'm pretty sure the government can give me a copy of all my emails in which I exhibited my privilege.
How you doing today?
I'm doing swimmingly. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. Mark will not be joining us today.
R.I.P. Mark.
So let's get... Yeah, rest in peace. So let's get this started. First things first. Adam, do you encrypt anything yourself?
I actually don't. I have an encrypted drive on which I keep files that I store other places unencrypted. So, by all intents and purposes, no. I do use a password keeper, 1Password to be exact, which keeps an encrypted copy of all my passwords with a master password to unlock them. It actually shares across my devices, which is very handy. But I find it's the best way to keep it, and hypothetically, if I don't save any of my passwords on my local devices, then if I lose my stuff, I just have to buy a new one, and I don't lose all my data.
So is that a security thing, or is it an ease of use thing?
It's mostly a security thing, because it creates a password that I'm not creative enough to come up with, and I just follow that. So I don't actually know my bank password. Like, if someone were willing to chop off my fingers, they would have all my fingers before I could tell them.
Ooh, but could they break that encryption?
I haven't actually attempted that.
All right, well, let's jump into it.
Yeah, let's get
jump into it. All right. Encryption itself is an old concept. It's before computers and such. So you think discussing legal backdoors has probably come up before, right? Yeah. Yeah, it has. I think in 93 or 94, I remember, or at least I read a couple of weeks ago, there was a congressional hearing on the topic, and the topic came up because the backdoor encryption chip was called the Clipper chip, and it allows specific parties, such as government, if they wanted to access encrypted information, they could access the information. So during this hearing, I think his name is Whitfield Diffie. He created the Diffie-Hellman protocol for secure key exchange, which is, to put it lightly, it's essentially an encryption method. So he made an encryption method, and he provided a few statements regarding the chip. And this is the Clipper chip. His statements were the backdoor would provide, it would be an awkward position with other governments and international customers, weakening its value. So like, you give the United States government access, but what if someone in the international realm needs it? So if a terrorist in a different country, they have an issue and they need to get access to specific information, but they don't have the right to this Clipper chip, right? They don't have, say, the password to access this Clipper chip, to make it simple enough. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, he mentioned that those who want to hide their conversations from the government for nefarious reasons or whatever, or just because they don't want the government to look at them, can probably get around the back door easily. So if you're paranoid enough, or if you're tactical enough, you understand what the Clipper chip is at that point. You understand how it works, or at least the concept of it, and you can just find an alternate route. So Diffie was like, okay, well, what's the point? And then the third thing was, the only people who would be easy to survey would be people who didn't care about government surveillance in the first place. So because of that, and kind of linking off of the second object, or the second question, there was no guarantee someone else might not exploit the backdoor for their own purpose. So if someone gets past the Clipper chip, um, what is the point of the Clipper chip at that point? It's already been exposed, and then it was. I can't quite remember his name, but he had figured out a way around the Clipper chip, and pretty much deemed it useless, and they abandoned it at that point. So, my questions to you, Adam,
Yes.
is what do you think of some of these statements? Let's start with the first one. International and other government entities having access to the Clipper chip.
Yeah, so I think the real risk here is most of our technology is, if not developed, produced in other countries. So let's say that we're going to get a U.S. electronics manufacturer to manufacture the U.S. version of the Clipper chip, right? And so U.S. can monitor all products that have this enabled on their version of the Clipper chip. But then China would assumedly have their own. So we would have to get some sort of mandate that says you must use a U.S. Clipper chip, and we wouldn't be able to export that version. And we'd hope that, we weren't getting Chinese versions of the Clipper chip or an exploit for that Clipper chip in China or in Japan or wherever France is a big producer.
Why would we not just use one Clipper chip standard?
Because then every government has access to each other's citizens' data.
And we might not want that, right?
That's correct.
Ugh. So that's pretty gross.
Right. So unless we have unless we have a country standard, and each country has their own standard, and we all decide to play nicely, which has never happened for anything, that's going to be a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And especially like just traveling internationally. So if there is a way to encrypt it, let's say there's a way to encrypt it perfectly, then as I take my MacBook to a different country, assumably they would want to be able to access my data as well. So would I just switch it out or switch the mode on the chip, or what would I do?
Or would you be held, legally responsible for switching out the chip, right? So if you go to a new country and they require a Clipper chip, what is the purpose there? You have a U.S. chip. Would there be some reciprocity in that if you cause a law and you're stuck in say France, would the U.S. government be required to hand off that information even though you're in a different country?
Right. And
that's
it just seems extremely short-sighted. I mean, just on the hardware side, but on the software side as well. Like, I can host everything in the mythical cloud that we've been over. I don't need to store anything on my device, and so I don't let's say they hack the San Bernardino iPhone, and it's legitimately just a browser. Now what? Like, you're assuming they save their stuff locally.
Yep.
And that's probably not safe to say.
But there's always a risk.
There is.
So, and there's always a possibility that something's there, but there's a couple issues with creating a chip like this. So, the concept of creating a Clipper chip, you make people aware of, what the Clipper chip is. So, if someone wanted to hide something and they know exactly what was preventing the data from hiding from everyone, they'd probably find another backdoor, or not a backdoor, but they'd find another method for encryption. So it's kind of like showing your hand at this point by creating the Clipper chip, because the people know what the Clipper chip is. They know enough about it to get around it.
Sure.
So what would be the point of it?
Well, not just that, but you're also assuming that there is no legitimate reason to encrypt traffic from the government. Which, depending on how you read the laws, illegal search and seizure, if you're investigating everything that's in my desk, you should be requiring a warrant for that.
It's very relevant to this modern era, right? Government surveillance.
I mean, my tin hat stops a lot. But if you've got a chip inside my phone that's inside my tin hat, because, it's really hard to listen through that thing.
Right.
It gets harder. It's inconvenient.
So actually, I want to jump off into the modern day era now.
Jump on in.
Yep. So the iPhone that I mentioned at the beginning. Let's jump over to today to the 2015 San Bernardino terrorist and their encrypted iPhone.
Let's give today's date of March 29th for those
March
who are
29th,
listening in
2016.
15 years.
So,
I love you, kids.
So over the... Yeah, I would hope that this debate comes up in 15 years again, but over the past month or so, the FBI was trying to get into this encrypted iPhone. The FBI could not get past the encryption, and because of that, they demanded that Apple provide a backdoor to get past the lock. They said the data may have information leading to other terrorists or terrorist activity, even though they couldn't really prove that. I would say this is likely just an attempt to bring this issue up again. Agreed. So this is saying, well, you're not patriotic, right? You would let me see terrorist information, right? So they've probably been trying to do this, or they have been trying to pass this for a while, but this is their quote unquote golden egg to be like, well, this is it. This is terrorist information. You're going to give it to us, right?
Yeah, so, I mean, to me, this really speaks to, the American with the CURN spelling. Like, it's not American country or company if they don't
Right.
allow the federal government in.
Which is odd because the people that typically say that are the ones that want smaller government, but that's another topic.
And they're not typically the most tech savvy, so I'm not sure they'd be the strongest proponents of this sort of thing.
Actually, there was a senator the other week who argued for this specific issue, or allowing the government to have a backdoor, and then like 3 weeks later, he's like, maybe not. Someone has told me about these issues that would come up, and this probably isn't a good idea. I think it was Lindsey Graham. So
oh man,
if he's changing
him,
it,
that's really sad. Yeah, so like that's the value of the lobbyist, right? So I'm going to say something stupid. Here I go. And then, the lobbyist comes in and says, actually, we don't really need the ozone layer. And then they agree that, having the government have access to everything that you do is maybe not the best idea. Make them work for it. It's so to me, and I go back to the 15 years from now when, my spawn who aren't going to exist, listen to this. If you go back 15 years from today, right, so like breaking 256-bit encryption was super hard. Like, it was computationally hard. So it's really short-sighted to say, well, we need this access now because we don't have the technology and we're never going to have the technology. And like the TV show 24 scenarios of the ticking time bomb, like there could be something on their phone that says when the next attack is. That's the worst argument for everything other than calling someone a Nazi, right? You would give up all your freedom if that is the argument that you're going to take, and the slippery slope argument.
So just the other day, the FBI reported that they were able to access the phone without the need for Apple to provide a backdoor to the iPhone. This was done by an unknown third party at this time, and they have not stated how they have accessed the iPhone. I'd say it's probably likely if the third party made a copy of the phone or the phone's memory and just performed brute force for the password. Some sad intern probably made a copy, brute force, typed in a password. It was wrong, so 11111, and then failed, wiped the memory, did it again. So that's probably not what happened, but
yeah, that would take years, and there's also the hardware component that would be challenging that. But yeah, I mean, it's possible, right?
Regardless of that, what if they did locate a vulnerability in the encryption? If a vulnerability was found by the third party, is the government responsible for providing Apple with that information? Would it be their duty to give them that information? Because if they don't, then they might be giving the dark web or whatever an opportunity to find this vulnerability and expose it themselves.
Sure. So on our last episode, we didn't address the dark web. But it's really hard to find message boards. But like, so I have a 10th hat theory, and then I'll get back to your question because
okay.
Suppose they didn't crack it, and they were just real embarrassed that they couldn't. Who is going through and saying, nope, they really did crack it? Obviously, the shooters aren't coming back and saying, no, you didn't. I still have access.
They did. So they did crack it because I saw they released a picture.
Oh, so they have an iPhone that they unlocked.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Well, there's no more of those, so it has to be the original. I mean, unless it's like...
Let's be honest, they're never going to release anything from
Right.
it. So.
Well, but that's my issue, is like, if we don't trust them when they say they cracked it, that they actually cracked it.
And we have bigger issues if they're playing those childish games.
If they've had unfettered control to all of our data for 15 years.
Right.
And now they're saying, we have all of your chat logs, we have all your emails, we can phone tap you without asking if you're, 7 degrees separated from Kevin Bacon. But this iPhone's really kicking our ass.
Yeah, I don't think... So the NSA, they hire a lot of intelligent code crackers. I'm pretty sure that they have the ability to do this, but the FBI wanted to use this to get this law passed.
Right.
It's much easier.
I don't think anyone's disagreeing with that.
Right.
They really need a new PR representative because they don't look good after any of this, right? The fact that they need to ask Apple, and then it took 2 months, and then they say, yeah, we found it, but, sensitive and all that, we can't tell you what we found, but you have to trust us.
Donald Trump's doing the, don't buy an iPhone because they won't give the backdoor.
If you want me to jump off the deep end here, I will do it. You believe you me, I will.
I believe in Donald Trump.
So going back to your question, let's say they did get into it, and should they be telling Apple, right?
Yes.
I would argue yes, but they have no incentive now that Apple didn't help them.
Well, if their incentive is the safety of the American public, they are not necessarily providing the vulnerability, but showing that there is a vulnerability by reporting on it. If they don't report on it, it's probably fine, but it will probably come out at some point that they found a way in, and then people will be trying to find another way in. So it could be used maliciously if people are like, oh, okay, there's probably a way in here. But I do agree with you that they don't get anything out of it, but they're not a company technically, so they don't need to get anything out of it. They need to protect the citizens.
Right.
I don't know. I'm interested, Adam. So mirroring the 1993 or 94 discussion regarding the Clipper chip, is there anything here that's different besides the device at hand being an iPhone? Is the information is technically very similar in a way. I'd say the discussion is pretty much almost identical.
Sure.
So that's kind of interesting and kind of concerning that it's coming up again. I say that concerning because, well, if people could talk about the Clipper chip from 15 years ago, from 15 years from now, they'll be talking about this. What's the precedent at that point?
Yeah.
I'm confused on, if they keep failing at trying to do this, when is it like, okay, we tried this before, let's not even bring this up again?
Yeah, I don't think they come out. I think they were hoping for a public outcry, right? So they were hoping for people to go to their senators and say, I'm going to kick Apple out of California if you don't support our troops or if you don't support the FBI or whoever it's going to be. And to say that it was mixed as being generous, in my estimation. I mean, obviously I live in a liberal bubble in the New York City, but you run into, like, I didn't see anyone who felt super strongly about it, mostly because people, like, it flew under the radar, generally, in my opinion. It made the news, but people didn't actually understand what was going on.
Encryption and terrorists.
Yeah, and I think one of the Kardashians did something right after, so that took the news.
Watch out.
Yep.
So what do you think the likelihood of this succeeding, like this legal precedent succeeding in the near future? Because I would say, just based on the political atmosphere of this country, especially with someone like Donald Trump gaining a lot of access to the political parties, just based on the attitude, I feel like you just really need a good kick, and then people will be able to back this 100%. They'll be like, okay, this is a big deal. This could have been prevented. This information was here. We need to pass this.
Sure.
What do you think? Do you think that this is just going to happen at some point?
I don't. I think
Okay.
that the best chance that the FBI or law enforcement agencies are going to have in combating this is just getting a better computer than other people have. They're just getting more computing power that can try to break this. I don't think they could win in the court of public opinion.
I kind of hope not.
And they certainly won't come. They won't come correct like they did this time, where they said, "Hey, we need your help. We got to do this. We got to do this." They're just gonna go straight to Congress behind closed doors and say, "Hey, you need to either compel this or just know that America's blood's on your hands." And that's generally their MO.
Do it or the terrorists win.
That's right.
So, Adam, I have a scenario for you. I want your answer, and I want you to back it up. Okay? Don't say it's just because it's a bad scenario. It doesn't count. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So, there's a bus full of children, and a man hijacks that bus.
Okay.
He has a shiny new iPhone, and he leaves the kids in a place only he knows, but he records the location of it on his phone.
Okay.
Later, in a standoff with the police, he says, "I have an encrypted iPhone which knows the location of the children, but you'll never get to it. Thanks, Apple." And then he dies in a shootout with the police.
Sure.
What do you do? Do you let the kids die because Apple won't create a backdoor?
So in this imaginary, in this
24 scenario.
Yeah, this 24 scenario. I
Ooh, you can't
would
answer.
say that those kids are sayonara.
But that wouldn't happen in this, like, kids.
Yes.
That would get so much. That would get approved next day.
I think
People
it gets
would-
approved. I don't know that. I think it depends on the company that they're trying to force.
But so if Apple says no,
Sure.
who would support Apple in that political atmosphere? Who would support them and said the blood is on your hands of kids?
I think that you run into an issue of if this hypothetical 24 scenario happened, and this is me super jaded, I would think that if intelligence organizations thought that they could win that battle, they would have come up with this scenario before, right? So they would have put more stress on the Bernardino case. They would have said, we have reasonable knowledge that says that they were connected with, you're affiliated with a larger group of an active cell that's still in the United States. We need to get in now. Like, this would have been the time to do it, rather than a school bus full of children or waiting for something else to happen.
But this is so easy, Adam. It's just one password away from getting the answer you need.
Sure. But at what cost?
You're letting them die.
I would like to
Well,
think...
you can always what you could do, Adam, is just you make that back door, and then you crumple it up and you throw it in the fireplace, right?
Yeah, we totally... As soon as we get keys to a door, we totally give the keys back. We're famous for
Thanks,
that.
we don't need this anymore.
Oh, you're saying that I could do this and get into other people's stuff and have weapons? Yeah, no, we don't need that.
So, this scenario is literally never going to happen, but I do
hopefully not.
think it well, I hope not, but I do think it's an interesting scenario in that your answer is right there, but you just ethically, encryption is just a concept, right? You could, however, if you release that backdoor or open up that floodgate, you could be risking the lives of a lot of other people.
I'm going to
you
butcher
can't
this
really-
quote, but I believe there was a very old slaveholder that said he would sacrifice liberty for security, deserves neither.
It's beautiful. Who was
I
that?
think it was shit. I think it was Franklin.
Michael Scott.
Either Franklin or Michael Scott, certainly.
Or Wayne Gretzky. I'm pretty sure it was Franklin. And if it wasn't,
It is now.
please correct us. It
Yeah,
is now.
put it in the comments below.
You know what? Adam Blake, 2016.
Hey, I just said it. It's an artist's interpretation.
So, any other comments, Adam, on this topic?
No, I think, we gave a really thoughtful, well-researched argument on the pros and cons of this topic, and we should probably just write this down and put it in an encyclopedia, which for the kids out there is the internet in books.
The internet, and maybe even threatfix.com, right? You can visit that, right?
Ooh.
Right?
Yes.
Right? All right. So, what are your thoughts on the backdoor encryption topic? Do you encrypt your data? If you do, why? Or why not? Or whatever. Do you think that a backdoor, which may provide access to some critical information, could be useful? What's your viewpoint? Let us know. Or not. I don't care. Anyway, this is Paul and
Adam.
And we'll talk to you in the next one.